Today, we're tackling the fundamental aspects of living with type 1 diabetes, balancing blood sugar. It's a journey filled with challenges and learning, and we're here to explore it all. Let's dive into how we can navigate these highs and lows with grace. Today, I have some friends with you guys. I have the lovely Tiana Cooks. I want Tiana just to do a brief introduction and let us know who you are.
Hi, I'm super excited. My name is Tiana, as you mentioned, and I have had type 1 diabetes since 2014, so almost 10 years, which is crazy to think about. I'm an advocate in the diabetes community. I love to compete in pageants. I'm always working out or outside in nature, and I enjoy trying new foods and traveling. I'm always down to travel.
Thanks, Tiana. We're so happy to have you here. Will, what's up? Tell us about you.
Great day, everyone. Great day. My name is Willie Streets. I'm a type 1 diabetic of 20 years. This past March marked my 20-year anniversary. I am a community activist or actionist because everything that I do, I put in action. I take measurable steps in my community to do the things that I do. I'm an art trauma therapist. I run a media literacy program for adjudicated youth. That's teens that have been in or out of the criminal system. I teach them aspects of media influence, impact, and how them creating their own source of media and brand, how they can actually change the path that they're on. So that's a bit about me.
All right. No, we're happy to have you here. And last, Bridget.
Hi, I'm Bridget Wood. I'm a registered dietitian and certified diabetes care and educational specialist. I have been living with type 1 diabetes since 2009, so I think that's 14 years. My math is always awful. But by day, I work for a diabetes management company, and by night, I do a lot of fun stuff with cooking, playing around with media, sometimes some speaking engagement, writing content, just the works. But my life is just all diabetes all the time. So I'm excited to be here too.
We love it. We love it. And a little about me, I've been a type 1 diabetic for 17 years, almost 18. I can't believe I've made it this long. But I also work in healthcare. I work as a global hospital consultant, and I'm also a health and well-being coach. So I just love talking about health, love talking about community. And for fun, I love to eat. I love to do activities. I like to do everything. But most importantly, I really like engaging with our diabetes community. And that's why I have y'all here. This is why we're doing this show, to really just talk about things from a different perspective, because we all do unique things professionally, but we also are big influences in our community. So I really just want to dive in and start talking to you guys today about balancing blood sugar. And my first question is, what does balancing blood sugar mean for someone with type 1 diabetes? And why is it crucial for their overall health? Who wants it?
I'll go. So balancing blood sugar is it's a whole big process in balancing blood sugar. To me, it's not all about just glucose and that control, because from when we wake up in the morning to when we go to sleep, there are many different variables that interact with our daily routine. Um, so balancing blood sugars is not reaching towards a certain target or goal. It's about our whole health, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional well being. If we're set at reaching those goals and targets, then our blood sugar goals and targets will fall in motion.
Yes, that's a word right there. I love everything about holistic health and holistic well-being, because so much stuff impacts your diabetes. And if you're not taking charge of all of it, like, you won't be balanced. You won't be balanced at all.
I was going to add too, I feel like sometimes diabetes can consume a lot of our life. And so I think balancing blood sugars somewhat has to do with balancing a sense of like self and a sense of like overall well-being and just happiness, and still being able to fulfill, everything that makes your heart happy, while at this same time keeping in mind that diabetes is still there but you can still live a happy and healthy life despite having diabetes, and balancing it all is definitely doable.
No, right there with you. It is manageable. Bridget, what's on your mind here?
I know, I just always keep talking, but I love both of those things, and I completely agree. It is totally about the bigger picture. We want to make sure that when we are balancing blood sugars, people think sometimes that just means having that perfect line or that perfect graph, but it does encompass the mental component. If you are trying to strive for a certain amount of control or levels, and you're feeling like you're not in control of yourself, then you're not balancing those blood sugars. And it's always important to remember that diabetes, it's not in the driver's seat, it's in that passenger seat, it's along with you for the ride, but it's not taking control. We're in it together. So we want to make sure that we're balancing the balance between the two.
Strongly agree.
No, yep, right on. Because I think the biggest thing I've struggled with is, all right, like, what does my life look like? And our lives are constantly changing, and so is our diabetes. So adjusting to find that balance is one of the keys I've been able to get through to really have constant balance, because every day is different. Every moment is different. Like, you could do the same thing every day and your blood sugars could be different. I could do the same thing every day and I could feel different. So being able to navigate through that and give yourself some grace to get through these times, and knowing that balance is a moving target, I think can go a long way.
Absolutely.
Right.
Can I go off that? We must first understand that persons not managing diabetes or chronic health conditions, they too have stressors that affect them. It's not all ice cream and cake for them either. So whether it's socially, emotionally, physically, we are all affected by our own lived experiences, the things that happen throughout our lives, throughout our days, just from an everyday sense of, like I said previously, the variables that do exist. I mean, we're not always on top of our so-called management, but as long as we're on top of our our physical and mental well-being, then, like I said previously, that will all fall in play. So we don't all have to shoot for the same targets that others shoot for, because it's about our own body, our own mental, and how things affect us individually.
I echo that 100%. And this really leads me to, like, my next question is on, like, what are some of the common myths and misconceptions about blood sugar management and type 1 diabetes?
Well, if you ask some providers, they think that you're not ever going to go high or low ever. And like whenever they see that on the graph, sometimes, while it is warranted, of course, you want to get to the root cause, sometimes it isn't necessarily understood that things just happen. Like you said, like we can be doing the same thing every day and eating the same thing every day and just having the same routine, and the blood sugars or the diabetes just does what it wants to do. So it's important to like keep that in mind as well. But that is the biggest one that I see, because even when I'm even having my own issues with like highs and lows, and other people see it and they're like, well, you're a provider, you're da 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 da, and they're just confused. I'm like, but I'm a human being, and this is just what the reality is, and that's just how it's going to be. So
Right there, you said, I am a human being. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, we are human. We are superhuman some days, but we are human. We're still going to make mistakes. Things are not going to be perfect. Like, life is hard. Life is not perfect. And we are given things a little bit different, but how we manage, how we go through is going to look different. And at the end of the day, we're still people. We're people living with something, but we're people.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Another great common myth is that everything about diabetes is food related. That may be the most common myth, when food is, I mean, it's greatly related to our blood glucose levels rising or lack of carbohydrates and them dropping or falling. But there are so many different aspects that go into our day-to-day management, from the amount of sleep we get to with the time we wake up, the dreams we have. There are so many different things and so many balls that are thrown our way that we can't grab or balance them all. So when we talk about balancing blood sugars, balancing glucose levels, we must too look at the psychological aspects of things that occur to us on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. All of these other interactions, like you mentioned, sleep is one of the biggest misconceptions, I think. Like one time, like if you're wearing a CGM, you might have alert, your sleep gets interrupted. You could have had a rough day. You could have had a day just full of ups and downs, lows and high blood sugars, or stressors, or just, hey, like I had to go to work today. I had to play my game today. I had to do these other things. I had to pick up my kids from school. I had to do X, Y, and Z. Like like your sleep, if your sleep isn't intact, your diabetes can be completely out of whack and you could be doing everything all right. Like it's not just checking your blood sugar and taking your insulin. There's so much more. And I think once you come to that realization, you start to find balance. You start living with diabetes rather than having diabetes. Tiana, anything to add on that?
No, I was just gonna say I agree with everything you guys are talking about. I think for me though, like I've had so many times when, like last night, for example, I woke up. This has happened the last 3 nights actually. And I only woke up because my Dexcom alarm went off and my blood sugar was at like 48 with a down arrow. And I just woke up like drenched in sweat and I literally had like cookies, I had Oreos, I had 2 Gatorades. I think I ate some spaghetti. Like I was just eating anything I could see. And I had to wake up like 2 hours after that and go to work and act like everything was normal. And I was on this call and I couldn't even think straight. Like they're asking me questions. My body literally felt like so shaky. It almost felt like my thoughts were shaky, like my brain was like shaking. Everything just felt so crazy. And that was one of those times where you just push through despite your blood sugars being all over the place, despite not feeling well. And yeah, I think that sometimes people don't see the struggle that you're going through, outside of what they see when you show up. And so that happened today, and I just think it's never ending, right? Diabetes is 24/7, never ends.
Oh, that is literally the worst when you have like these interruptions, but you have to keep moving. And I think that's really how you thrive with living with diabetes. Like, yes, it's going to be turbulent sometimes. It's going to be turbulent. You're not going to get through that. That's life. But understanding and listening to your bodies in these moments, you're like, yeah, I needed to eat. I needed to stay up, not just go through this yo-yo game. I need to take care of it in this moment so that I'm not getting woken up again in the next hour and I have less sleep. But you also do see that impact and you have to push through it. And it's not fair. It's not fun, but you can't let that defeat you in those moments. And
Yeah,
when
it's
you were,
not like stigma. It's not like stigma in sense of like, oh, your blood sugar's like low. It's not like there's a myth because of it. I think it was more so like sometimes we aren't feeling well and then people think something's wrong with us, but it's like I literally just don't feel right. Like people were probably like, yeah, Tiana is maybe she's tired, maybe she's this or that, when in reality my blood sugar was just so low, like I just genuinely wasn't feeling well because of that. So yeah, I think that we're constantly facing different like assumptions of our overall character, well-being, the way that we show up, and oftentimes it is because of things that people can't see that's going on. So
yeah, I think that's well said. And I think those, not necessarily stigmas, but those expectations, like it's not like giving me a piece of candy isn't going to make me feel better in the next 20 minutes. Like it might raise my blood sugar, but I might still not be functioning and it might take me a whole day to recover. Like I know there's numbers around it, like when 40 minutes you'll be back up and you'll find, no, I do not I don't get to equilibrium the same time everywhere. Like it's different, but sometimes you got to just let people be where they're at. And especially as a diabetic, like where you're at, you're showing up and doing your best that you can in that moment. And that's enough. That is enough. Tiana, you were talking about food, and it's making me really have some questions for Bridget. Because as a dietitian, and I love food, you guys know this, like I could just talk about food all day, but food and diabetes is a whole totally different category. But when we're thinking about the different foods and how it impacts our blood sugar levels, what are some of the key dietary strategies or nutrition strategies to help maintain that balance? I know there's a lot of misconceptions out there about you can't do this, you can't do that, but telling yourself you can't isn't finding balance. So Bridget, I'd love to know like your perspective on that.
Yeah, and so that's exactly what you said. Telling yourself that you can't isn't finding balance, nor is it sustainable. There's going to be moments where you're going to want to eat the fried rice or any of those things that some people deem as that is bad for people with diabetes, and that's not the case. These things can be enjoyed. It's just about finding the right strategy for yourself. So whether that be changing your dosing timing, or even making sure that your bolus and your why am I at a loss for words? Making sure that your levels are correct in your pump, or whatever the settings are supposed to be in your pump and your doctor. Sometimes when that is not matched up correctly, that could be the issue. Or maybe it needs to be a little bit more movement throughout the day to help kind of lower whatever random insulin resistance and kind of increase that insulin sensitivity to help your body work a little bit better with the insulin that you're injecting. So I really think that people lose sight of things and think, oh my gosh, it's a food, it's a food, it's a food. When in reality, it could just be maybe you didn't change your site every 3 days like you're supposed to. I do this all the time. Like you're supposed to, and your absorption's not right. Or maybe it's a bad insulin, or maybe the timing is off and you should have pre-bolus for this because it had a lot of carbohydrates, and you want to make sure that the insulin is already on board to kind of counteract that high amount of sugar and that rise that you're going to experience. So I think that is kind of my whole like thought process with the thing. I know some people don't agree, but that's fine too. I feel like as I've gotten older and just, meeting with different people and different people within the community and different patients, people are going to be ready to do whatever they're ready to do at their time. And so it makes sense, and you have to kind of meet those people halfway. But at the same time, again, there is no such thing as a diabetic diet, right? We're eating to protect our bodies, right? So our diet is just making sure that we're doing a balanced, healthy, quote unquote, diet for your body. But the diabetes, yeah, but like it's not because of that necessarily, if that makes complete sense. Like if you're doing heart healthy, yeah, that's great. You could have an increased risk of heart disease, but it's not necessarily your diabetes in that moment, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes complete sense to me. And like one thing what I tell some of my coaching clients and everything is I hate the word diet. Like make lifestyle decisions, be proactive in what you want, know what you're doing. Like if you want to eat the cake, know you're going to eat the cake and own it. But also know like maybe you won't want to do that every day because you're going to feel like crap if you're not doing these other things right. But know the impact of your choices. And when we're thinking about these choices, it has me really think about the psychological impact of diabetes and managing and some of these parts. Like we're thinking about food, we're thinking about exercise, we're thinking about all these things holistically. But Will, I really would love to know like these psychological impacts of managing our blood sugar and these decisions. Like how can individuals cope with this, I guess, stress or responsibility that we're given as diabetics?
Right. So, as persons living with diabetes, we know we have added stressors on our lives, more than the 180 plus decisions that we make. So on some days that can be upwards of 1 to 2,000 more decisions that we make. As persons living with diabetes, we are 20% more likely than those without diabetes to have anxiety. And that's not just anxiety on our regular daily lives, but anxiety on managing our diabetes. The tools, seeing the trends, just looking through social media. There's so many different aspects of life that can make us anxious. And normally we don't even realize that until we are faced in a situation like where we're at a meeting or something of that nature, where we must just sit down and just breathe. So that's something that I practice with my students, just breathing. Take some time out to yourself, even if that means as an adult. If you feel like you need to scream, you may need to go into that shower, let the water run, and scream it out. Take some time to yourself. Find what best helps you mentally. Because if we don't handle our mental well-being, then the physical well-being is straight out the door. We must do the things that we can to best ourselves.
No,
Yes,
preach.
yes, just best
that was a word
ourselves.
right there. That was a word, because best ourselves, like stress is an underlining complication of life. And especially with diabetes, it impacts us differently, but addressing the stress, I think that's how I personally find balance. I know I've seen that with clients, seen it beyond, but you have to find your way of addressing. You have to find your way to face it, because if not, it will eat at you. You can't hit those physical activities. You can't hit those nutritional goals. You can't hit any of those things if you're not addressing the elephant in the room. And the stress and the anxiety, I've personally gone through it when I travel across the country, and I've been in different time zones, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, why was I 35 here? And then I look at it, I was like, oh, I didn't change my pump settings. I'm in a different time zone. This is why everything's completely off. But some of these smaller stresses add up to bigger stresses. And one way, like, I love to combat stress, or one of my routines to help relieve stress, is through physical activity. And Tiana, I know you're always on the move, you're always in the gym, fitness is your thing. But when we're thinking about balance and the influence of physical activity on blood sugar levels, what comes to mind to you as we're thinking about this holistically?
I think with diabetes, exercise can be intimidating and very scary for a lot of people, because there are always risks of having a low blood sugar, or some people experience higher blood glucose. I said glucose, blood sugars when they are exercising. But in my opinion, I think exercise has played a critical role in my own diabetes management. And I feel like when we can start making time to implement that into our daily schedules and our daily lives, we'll all see the benefits of it, in our diabetes overall. I will say I'm not like a medical professional. I don't know what specific insulin amounts people take, but what works for me is when I go to exercise, I actually try not to take any insulin prior to exercising, because any type of physical activity will make my blood sugar just like plummet really fast, whether I'm doing aerobic exercises or anaerobic. Other people I know, when they are doing anaerobic exercising, their blood sugars will just spike like sky high. That doesn't happen with me. I ran the New York City Marathon in 2021, and people just are at awe at the fact that I was at I think I was at 250 before I started. I took 0 insulin the entire time, and I probably ate about 150 carbs, and I finished the race at 132. So I know there are people that cannot do that. But it's been something that you kind of have to, I guess just see what works for you. And it's like a science experiment every time I work out. Like you said, everything changes. You could do the same thing a different day and it could have a totally different outcome. So
No, you're spot on. And for me, like when I used to play basketball, I would be sitting high at a 400, 500, and I'm playing the best game of my life. And it was to that point, like when I was growing up, I didn't have a CGM. My dad would check my blood sugar at 3 a.m. because at 3 a.m. or anywhere around that time, I'm in the 40s. I need a whole meal. Like my mom had to make a spread because I was literally in that survival mode. But that's an impact of exercise. Everyone's different types of exercise. If it's adrenaline based, that makes me have higher blood sugar. But even now as an adult, the different types of movement that you're doing for your body impact your blood sugar differently. And you have to find that balance, because there's 10 million ways to exercise. There's 10 million ways to do all these things, but you have to pay attention and then correct and adjust. I think that's how really you balance your diabetes, is making those minor adjustments, paying attention, naming it, doing these key things to help you live your life. And when we're talking about exercise, I'm just kind of going back to the psychological piece of it. You mentioned breathing. And when I think of breathing, I also think of mindfulness and stress reduction and other techniques like that. But when we're thinking of exercises in general, how is that beneficial from all of our different sectors to balancing and getting better blood sugar control?
I think the cool thing about exercise. Sorry, Will, I probably just stole your thunder. But I was just going to quickly say, I think exercise comes in so many different forms. Like you could be doing yoga. You could be just going on a walk in nature and enjoying some sun. I don't think exercise always has to be like hardcore weightlifting in the gym, going on runs, or anything crazy like that. You could just find something that you enjoy and go on a hike, something like that.
Yep. And even through some of these breath work and yoga, those are still movements. If you're sitting here doing these deep breathing exercises, which might help your mental health, might help your diabetes health, might help you just feel good, that's still a form of exercising. That's still a form, like walking through the grocery store, that's technically movement. Like if you take me to Costco, I'm there hours. That's a lot of movement. I track my steps. But all of these play a part into getting better glucose control, getting better physical control, getting better pieces of everything. Willie, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, I truly enjoy this conversation because we get to see the different holistic approaches, whether it's science, nutrition and diet, physical health, mental health, well-being. And we see that it's not being pulled in one direction. We see that if we have all of these different sectors brought together, it gives everyone the opportunity to look at themselves and figure out what is best for them. Because we know no two type 1s are alike. We are not the same. We have similar things as far as control goes, but we are not the same.
No, you are right. And just adding to that, just that holistic approach, that's my bread and butter. I love it because as a health coach, like we're taught to look at all these things, look at yourself. But what's at the middle of that? You are. So see in all these places that impact your life, impact you and your well-being, see where that comes into play. And this is something I don't even know if I've told y'all, even though we're close. I just released a journal and I kind of took that concept and applied it to diabetes. I came out with like, this is your daily drop. Here's everything that goes into your drop of life, your drop of pieces. And I'll share this with y'all, but it's so crazy to think about. Here are these very important things that impact me every day that also taking time to acknowledge and be mindful of and make proactive choices around could make balancing my life, could make balancing my diabetes, finding these better ranges better. But at the end of the day, like I don't do that so I have great diabetes. I don't think great diabetes exists. I do this so that I feel good and I could do things that I want to do outside of managing my diabetes because we all have lives. We all like to do other things. And this is just a piece of us. It's not all of us.
I love that. It is a piece of us, and that's a good point. And even for the people who do have great diabetes, the thing is they're just so consumed with that control, and sometimes that can just weigh on the mental, and then that does impact your whole relationship with your diabetes and food and whatever else. So yeah, I'm basically just saying I agree. I love everything that you guys are saying.
Yeah. No, I think this is great conversation. And I know we're almost at time, but I really wanted to ask you guys, when thinking of it from your personal experience, from your expertise, from your thought leadership, when someone's coming to you, let's say someone's listening and they're newly diagnosed or they've had diabetes for 27 years, and they're like, how do I balance my life? How do I balance my blood sugar? How do I survive in this crazy world while being diabetic? Like, what piece of advice or tip would you give to somebody?
I would have to say to just be patient with yourself because we're all trying to figure it out. And just like you, this is my first time living with diabetes. And so, I think, taking it day by day and you learn every single day. I learn, that diabetes is not something that's gonna stop me. Instead, I use it as like a motivator. I'm like, okay, because I have diabetes, I am gonna run a marathon. Because I have diabetes, I can like do all of the things that people probably assume you cannot do. Diabetes has taught me just to be so strong. There are so many days where I just have to pick myself off of the floor, and I am just like, how am I gonna keep going? Like, this is so hard. And I realize I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was. And then the last thing is just like to be graceful, give yourself grace. Speak life into yourself. And when diabetes gets hard and you feel like you just can't keep going, tell yourself that you are strong, you are powerful, You are perfectly and wonderfully made just how you are. And those are the things that will keep you going. And then find some community. There's so many of us out there who really want to see you succeed, who are going through this too. You know, we've gone through it and you're not alone. So find those people, gravitate towards your tribe.
No, spot on. I think you're not alone and you have a tribe. We're all here. We're here doing this for the community because a lot of stuff isn't talked about. We're not talking about these things from this holistic lens, how all these things come into part. Like diabetes is more than pricking your finger and taking your insulin and going to your doctor when they tell you to. Like that's the minimum. And that's not living in my opinion. It's not living. And I think all these little things we've talked about help you have a little bit more life in you by looking at these things and figuring out how to manage it, how to do these things. Because even you can't manage a disease in any sense, but you can manage your life. All right. Bridget, what piece of advice or tips would you give somebody listening?
Just the same thing, to be patient and have grace. Your diabetes yesterday might not be the same diabetes that you have today and might not be the same diabetes that you have tomorrow. And that's something that I feel I wish I would have known kind of in the past too, because sometimes it feels like when you have everything dialed in, something happens and everything goes back to square one. And that can happen. And that's just how it is. Things can change. And so it's about not giving up and really just having that community and people to lean on, because honestly, that is the only way that I would have been able to even be here today, to be completely honest. So just it's not as easy as sometimes it looks. So at all.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not easy, but it's not
At all.
undoable. Like you can do it. You
Exactly.
can achieve it. Like what else do you have to do? You know, and if you get
Exactly.
to the point where you're like, I can't do this, I can't go through this, like reach out to your community, reach out to your health providers, because you have people that are rooting for you. There are resources out here to help you get through whatever you're getting. But let's not let diabetes hinder us from living. Let's take those other factors are such a bigger piece of it. And there's ways to get support. There's ways to get through this stuff. But we want you to know that you can do this. We're somehow doing it. And that's why we're here, telling our stories, sharing our experiences, and doing this together, because it's not, it doesn't have to be this lonely of a disease. Will, what are your tips and thoughts?
So the ultimate tips that I have is whether you've been living with diabetes for a while or you're newly diagnosed, is just get to learn you. Get to learn about yourself mentally, physically. Get to learn about the different things that you do on a regular. Because although someone's basal may be perfect, but they don't realize that there are different things that come about their daily routine that will throw darts at it. And sometimes it will rise, sometimes it will drop. So just really get to learn you. It's and after you learn yourself, share that experience. Share it with your peers, share it with your family, share it with the community. Because myself, the DOC, Diabetic Online Community, is a branch of my family. And that's why you will always see me extending that olive branch to my people. Because yes, I have my blood family. I have my family that I live with. But I also have this family that I never knew that I would have. And it just means so much to me. Like all of you guys. I'm on a daily, I reach out to everyone to just share support, because I know there was a point in time in my life where I did not know that that support was there. I may have not even known that I needed that support, but today it's there, and I wouldn't relinquish it for anything, because you're a part of me and I'm a part of you. And if we join forces together, there's no stopping us.
No, you are spot on. I'm right there with you. Like, community is what made me start caring about my diabetes. And even thinking of it, like, I didn't really know that many diabetics when I was diagnosed. It took me about 10 years to like actually meet other diabetics. And then from there, after probably 12 years in, is when I met someone who looked like me who had type 1 diabetes. And that just opened a different sense of community to me. And it's great because things are not always representative, things aren't always talked about, but every type of person can get diabetes. Diabetes does not discriminate. And it's one of those things, like, find your tribes within a tribe. Like, we're all here, we're all living different walks, we're all doing these things, but finding those similarities, finding people that you can trust and have shared experiences with, I think is one of the best ways that you can find balance, one of those best ways you can figure out who you are, how you want to thrive with diabetes, and how you just want to figure out, this is the life that I'm leading, and this is how I'm going to get through it. And I guess my piece of advice and any tips here are really take time to figure out what your habits are and your values, and then really what routines are you putting into place to help you get there. Every day is an opportunity. Every day is a way for you to take a step to being healthy, the step to feeling good. And if you're taking time to have these habits, have these conversations with yourself, to really see what's going on in your life, and rather than just, oh, I was low today, I was high today, or I haven't talked to anybody about any of these things going on in my life, even though I'm making these millions of other extra decisions every week. Like, find a way to let that out, find a way that works for you, because that also goes into your health. It goes into your well-being. And if that stuff isn't in check, and if you're not putting these routines and habits around this stuff, it will eventually eat at you. And then you won't be living, you'll be surviving, living with disease, surviving adulting, surviving all these things life throws at you. As we wrap up our first episode, I hope we've shed some light on the balance of managing your blood sugar and beyond in type 1 diabetes. It's not just following a set of rules. It's really about understanding your body, who you are, learning from your experiences, and making informed decisions. Because you are not alone in this journey, but the most way for you to grow in this journey is to take a look at yourself and figure out, how do I want to navigate these challenges? How do I want to lead a balanced and healthy life? Until next time.